I got a call from Andre Grant, who was the counsel in the case, asking me to help him with the case. And make a long story short, I told him, no, these kids didn't do that. Everybody knows they didn't do that. You don't need me in this case. Well, we hassle about it in the conversation. I still declined to come to his defense. And he said, well, Judge, if you don't mind, can I talk to you about it? It was okay, yes. So I hung up. Again, my wife said, let's talk. She said, how can you say your prayers at night and thank God for the blessings he's bestowed upon you? Thank God for the goodness that he has shown you. And when two children need your assistance, you tell them no. I said, they don't need my assistance. She said, yes, they do, because they asked for it. Make a long story short, she said, suppose they end up being found guilty. I said, you're right. I'll call Andre in the morning and tell him I help him. She said, you're not assured that you're going to be here in the morning. I said, you're right. I reached and got the phone and called him back and said, I'll help you on the case. And of course, we went to court on the case the next day. Now, what the public has not been apprised of adequately, in my judgment, was this. It was a frame from the beginning.
Framed by the police?
By the Chicago police officer. Yes, it was.
And at the time, they reported all the way up through...
There was a press conference held on the morning of August 10th, 1998, in which the Chicago police brass, along with this officer who was there, announced to the world that these boys had confessed to sexually assaulting and killing Ryan Harris. And that information went all over the world. The two youngest murder offenders in the history of civilization. The reality is, the confession attributed to these boys, which they did not do, did not confess. But we learned that the confession the officer attributed to them was the same confession, word for word, that he had attributed to another young black boy in another murder case involving a woman at 79th and Western Avenue. Her name will come to me in a moment. Word for word, period for period, T for T. And of course, you know that just couldn't possibly happen. When that was brought to the attention of the authorities, of course, the case had to be dropped, which they did. The tragedy is that the officer who did it has never been prosecuted about it.
What did that say to you? Because the John Burge case is still flirting around here in Chicago. What did the Ryan Harris case say to you about the structure of the powers that be here in Chicago? Again, we're just talking to you.
It said more, what it said to me was this. What that case, as well as others said to me, is this, that I am tremendously blessed and fortunate to have been able to go to law school and pass the bar and get out of law school and hang up a shingle to represent people. It said to me that my obligation to serve, to help, has been a part of my being, a part of my living. It said that in that case, at least, the justice system worked. It worked because of my and Andre Grant's efforts in the case to help two young boys and to help the community. And matter of fact, to help the justice system benefited from our service in that case.
Let me bring you 10 years forward. We just have a few minutes left before this edition of the show has to come to a close. But I got two more questions for you. The first one is, Ryan Harris was just 10 years ago, but just in the last few months you were quoted as saying, you know, the racial composition of the state's attorney's office is deplorable. And that was a story that, you know, made the Sun-Times and the Daily Law Bulletin. And it seems like, you know, Ryan Harris or the state's attorney's office.
When I ran for state's attorney, I think the year was 1990, what was it, whatever year it was. I really didn't have any desire to be a state's attorney of Cook County, but I wanted to bring to the attention of the public the gross disparity in that office of personnel. I wanted to bring to the attention of the county a philosophy that perhaps would be more beneficial in pursuing criminal cases. I wanted to challenge the concept that was being employed in the State's Attorney's Office and still is to this day. The reality is there are about almost 1,000 assistant Cook County, Illinois State's attorneys. Of that number, only about 40 are black.
And why is that important?
And there's not a black assistant state's attorney assigned as first chair in any courtroom in Cook County, Illinois. It is important because, first of all, the fact that it exists says something, does it not? It says that there's obviously racism in that office. It says, for example, that the black bar, the black lawyer, is not being adequately represented in that office. In particular, is that true when 95% of the defendants and victims that go through that office, as prosecuted that office, are blacks and Hispanics. So the culture, the mentality, the attitude of the black community is not properly represented in that office.
Well, you say that you perceive racism in the State's Attorney's Office. Let me ask you one final question, and I want to take this back to something you said in '87, and I know you caught some heat for this. You said any man south of Madison Street who votes for a mayoral candidate other than Mayor Harold Washington ought to be hung.
Mm-hmm.
You said that.
I said that.
Was that a racist statement?
Of course not. What they did was they took the statement out of context. I made a speech and I talked about Sarah Houston and her husband who were prosecuted for aiding and assisting black people in New York in registering to vote. And in fact, they were hanged for helping black folks to register to vote. And that's the context in which the statement was made. No man chose his birthplace or his birth parents. That's by divine order. I hasten to say that if I had to choose mine, I'd choose the same birth parents, the same birthplace. But you are black by divine order. I'm black by divine order. Black people were brought to this country as slaves, as you well know. And you're not talking about a period of that existed not for 15 minutes or 15 weeks, for 200 years. And upon blacks being emancipated, they were not given equal opportunity. We were not given an equal chance. We were still persecuted and prosecuted. And the denial of equal chance and opportunity still persists. You cannot ignore racial identity in our culture. And to do so, you're burying your head in the sand.
Let me ask you then two final questions. Number one, and you're a great trial lawyer, so I'm going to ask you if you can. Just give me a yes/no answer if you can. We're going to fast forward from 1987, and instead of Harold Washington, we're going to stick Barack Obama's name in there.
Yes.
So do you say that any man south of Madison Street who votes for a presidential candidate other than Barack Obama ought to be hung?
No, what I will say is Obama, in my judgment, is the most qualified candidate. I would say that Obama has demonstrated his character, that he ought to be President of the United States. And I would say that I'm going to vote for him. I hope everybody under the sound of my voice would do likewise. I hope he would be the next President of the United States. That's what I'll say.
All right, so you won't hang folks if they don't vote for him?
Well, we wait and see about that.
Okay. And last but not least, Judge, what would you like your legacy to be in the city when you make the transition to the next borough?
Well, I have done and will continue to do my best to improve it. I don't believe that the entrance into eternity is determined by what you do for yourself. The entrance into eternity is determined by what you do for others. And I'm hoping that my legacy will be that I've done my best, used my life to make better the lives of others.
Judge, thanks for your time.
And I'm hoping and praying that my reward will be to see his face someday.
Judge, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
You just had the honor and the privilege to hear from one of the most renowned lawyers in the city of Chicago. Hope you enjoyed your time. I'm Vic Henderson, President of Chicago Bar Association. Thanks for joining us.